Perhaps because this past Sunday was Father's Day, or perhaps because as you're watching this, I'm currently on vacation off the coast of Maine. Naps have been on my mind a lot. And not just naps, but what happens when you're napping and you get woken up and you're not quite done with your nap. That's a really disorienting and irritating feeling. I confess to probably being a little more grumpy than I need to be whenever that happens to me. But this is also on my mind because in our gospel text today, we have probably one of the most epic naps ever recorded. And of course, it's a nap by Jesus. Jesus is napping in the stern of a boat when an incredible storm begins to overwhelm the boats and the disciples and the entire Sea of Galilee. Water is flooding into the stern. There's waves whipping around. I like to imagine thunder and lightning, and of course the disciples shouting and bailing water, trying to keep the ship from going under. They're shouting and terrified, and Jesus is still asleep. I mean, that's a pretty epic nap. I wish I could take a nap that deeply that when the dog barked, I wouldn't wake up. But Jesus here, nothing, not even this awful storm is going to wake him up until finally the disciples are waking Jesus up. They have to go to him and shake him as the waves are crashing over them, splashing Jesus and them. And they're saying, Jesus, don't you care that we are perishing? And it's a question that's haunting. Because it's a question I would guess many of us have asked in some form or another. Maybe and especially even in this past year in which we endured a pretty terrible pandemic. Jesus, don't you care that we are perishing? I don't actually think that the disciples want Jesus or even think Jesus is going to calm the storm here. Certainly we understand that. What I think is they want Jesus to pull his weight. They want Jesus to pick up a bucket and try to bail them out. They want Jesus to try to right the ship and take hold of the sails or the rudder or to grab an oar and row. They think Jesus isn't doing his fair share. And so they're upset with him. That's not a question of faith for them at this point. They're not even thinking in those terms. They're looking at Jesus, not really understanding that here is God in the flesh with them in the midst of a storm. They're thinking, here's another set of hands that can do some work for us to keep us from drowning. Sometimes I can't help but think that's what we're like in our lives when we expect Jesus to do things for us. We're looking at Jesus not as the Son of God, but as another set of hands to help us finish our jobs or our task, to bail us out of a sticky situation. And so when Jesus wakes up, he says to the storm, "Peace, be still." And it is as much a rebuke to the wind as it is to the disciples. And he says, have you so little faith? Have you no faith? And it's a question that is striking. And it's, what were you afraid of? Have you no faith? Because for them, they were looking at Jesus as another set of hands. They didn't understand that the miracle was that God in the flesh had gotten into a rickety, perilous boat with them on a sea of chaos, knowing that the storm was coming, but refusing to leave them alone in it, being with them in it. That's the miracle of faith. That's the miracle of God made flesh. God never promised that following Jesus and following the way of love would mean that we never face storms, that we were never overwhelmed, that it would be easy. What God promises is that in the midst of all that, God will always be present. And God will never, ever abandon us. That's the miracle to me. Not just that Jesus could still the storms and the wind, but that God in Christ got in the boat, got in this rickety boat with these sometimes faithless disciples, knowing that there were storms on the horizon. God still got in the boat. And that's what God is like with us. God gets in that rickety boat of humanity, knowing that there are storms on the horizons, knowing that there will be times when we want to shake God and say, do your part, where we want God to fix everything, to bail us out, to be that cosmic divine handyman. And yeah, there may be times when God does do that indeed. And there may be times too that God simply reminds us, peace, be still. Be still. Because whatever comes in life, whatever storms come in life, whatever difficulties comes in life, however daunting the waves may seem, God is with us no matter what.